Well, good night, good night, good night, good night to all of you, my wonderful people out there. It's so good to be with you every Wednesday. I just want to say, call up a friend, tell them Advancing the Cause is on, and we expect them to tune in. Just call up your friends, let them know Advancing the Cause is on. And so, again, let me say good night to all of you. It's always good to have you here with us. So, tonight on Advancing the Cause, like every other Wednesday when I'm here, I would want to extend birthday wishes to all of our wonderful viewers who would have celebrated birthdays from last Wednesday to today, Wednesday. Happy, happy birthday to you. And I trust that God will continue to bless you as you grow older and wiser. And quote unquote, I don't mean old as in old, but as you go to another stage in life and you cross another milestone, then we pray that God will grant you the tolerance and the blessings you need to be wiser. And then on the very note, I want to extend condolences to all those who have lost loved ones between last Wednesday and today, Wednesday. Over the weekend, got some very tragic news over the weekend. We lost a teacher from Parika Salem. Um, there down on the east bank of Essequibo. Teacher Hemo, she died as a result of a fire. And her husband died in that. And so to the teachers from the East Bank Essequibo branch, we want to extend to you our heartfelt condolences. To her immediate relative and our school family, our heartfelt condolences to you. And we trust that even while you're going through this period of shock, this period of bereavement, that you are going to be comforted with the pleasant memories that you have of her. And of course, GTU at this time, GTU will be ensuring that we have there what we are supposed to do. We will ensure that we have there what we are supposed to do for you. And so, again, our heartfelt condolences, and we trust that you are going to be comforted by the fact that you have pleasant memories of her. We saw another teacher losing her brother to a motorcycle accident. I don't know what is happening on our roadways. So many accidents we're having on our roadways. Drivers, please take your time on our roadways. We had a truck, we had two cars, we had a minibus, and unnecessarily people are losing their lives. Let's please be cautious when we're using the roads. Look out for yourselves and look out for those who are not looking out for themselves. Too many lives are being lost at this time. We have with us as guests in studio again this week Dr. Mark Devonish, who's going to be here with us. So I'm going to bring him right on in. He's no stranger to these forums, like I said to you then, so that we can have our conversation going. Mark, how are you doing this evening? I know
I
it's
am not
evening
too
for me here, but it's
it's
night.
night
It's
here.
way out
It's
there for you.
about quarter to 11 over here.
Wow.
But in any event, I'm happy to be on your program once again, and I would like to join you in extending condolences to the relatives and the family of the teacher who died in Essequibo. It was very unfortunate how she died, and also I would like to extend condolences to the teacher whose brother died in the accident. Unfortunately, both deaths is more or less an indictment of the PPP, and it shows, for example, the high crime rate. That's why people have to barricade their windows and their doors to keep the bandits out. And
Yeah.
also, it's an indictment of the PP in terms of their management of our roadways, which is very unfortunate. So I would like to extend those condolences. I know it must be a very difficult time for
Mhm.
all those involved, but they can just console themselves in the me- memories of the loved ones who passed away.
Well, Mark, tonight we're going to be looking at education, wanton waste. Education equals wanton waste, poor performances and corruption. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're
Mm-hmm.
featuring education tonight. But before we go into that, I must say to us that today we have seen 180 water tanks. 180 water tanks, as the black tanks. They were given to residents of Suddy, Supernam, and Bethany that's on the Essequibo coast. Those water tanks were given to them, and so they are now able to access water following the distribution of those tanks, 450-gallon water tanks. Now, Mark, why couldn't the government do this all the time?
Well,
Why
it's
you
close to
waiting?
election. It's close to election, so they have to try to fool the people, fool the masses into believing that they are very active, they're proactive, so to speak. But we know based on the evidence that they're very much reactive, because the residents were without water for over 4.5 years of PPP, and only now an election year they decided that they're gonna give them these tanks. It's quite obvious. It's quite obvious the reason why they're doing it is painfully obvious. It is conspicuous. It can't be escaped that the fact that this year is election year, basically. So as a result, they will do anything to get votes.
But Mark, I don't know why they think that people are silly. I don't know why they think that Guyanese people are not sensible. You had 4+ years to make the lives of Guyanese citizens comfortable. You couldn't do it then, but you're hustling to do that now. All people got a saying, well, rain can't fall, dew can't
You can't
fall.
fool.
What you're trying to make up for now. So they went out there and they bought these tanks and they're distributing them, thinking that they can,
Fool the masses.
kerfuffle and fool the masses.
Mm.
But our people are intelligent and they
Exactly.
know if you couldn't do it then for us, how is it that you're finding monies to do it now? And it brings me to the issue of the teachers struggle that the teachers had.
Mm-hmm.
75 days out there in that struggle. And they couldn't find monies. $12 billion the teachers were asking for, 12 billion to give them a decent increase. They couldn't
Mm-hmm.
find it. 1 month after the teachers union, the president of the teachers union and the second vice president, after they signed that lopsided agreement, 1 month after, you found $60 billion to go to parliament and make a big announcement instantaneously. Mark, you can tell us what that
Mm.
word means. Instantaneously, each household will receive $200,000, and you couldn't find $12 billion just a month before then.
The sad reality is that Orphan Ali is not the smartest of persons, and he clearly himself doesn't know it's really instantaneous. Because if it were instantaneous, it would have been immediate. And it's 4 months since they've made that announcement, and so far they've only given the cash grants for like 171,000, if I
I think it's
remember correctly.
121,000 persons. I
Yes, a
think it's
hundred and
about.
something thousand persons,
Mhm.
and they have over 300,000 more to actually give. It is so sad and unfortunate that in a very small country, a relatively small country, PP has had an opportunity to make difference, and it's obviously from their actions that they're incapable of actually doing that, and it's just evidence of the fact that they're completely incompetent, because they're people who are desperately waiting for this 100,000, and that was evident in the rumors about the Mohammeds, when they were saying that the Mohammeds are is the Mohammeds are giving out 100,000, and hundred thousands of people flock their house, and that's just evidence of the fact that people are desperate. People are
Yep.
desperate. Food
Mhm.
inflation is off the scale.
Mhm.
People can't afford to provide a 3 square meals to eat, and it's very very sad. It's very sad, and I think we should call Orphan Ali President Instantaneous,
Yeah,
install President
exactly so.
Instantaneous, because
Exactly
he,
so.
he came out and he said so, and it hasn't happened as yet.
Well, he said so, and then the real president came out and he said it will take about 5 months.
Exactly,
It will take about
exactly.
5 months. So today, Mark, today is the 125th day since that announcement was made.
Exactly 4 months.
125 days since that
Hmm.
announcement was made, and people can't get those monies as yet. But the other thing is, we should be looking at, we're talking about the corruption. So we're going to run that first. We have here a PS Home Affairs. She was then May
Hmm.
Thomas. You remember that name? And I'm sure our
I
viewers
remember
will
her
remember
very
that
well. She
name.
went to America and she had the
Yes.
unfortunate experience of having her phones being confiscated, being questioned by I think by the FBI at the
Yep.
airports, and
Mhm.
being held up. And when she came back, there was this massive cloud over her. And then ultimately, she was sanctioned by the Americans.
Yes. And then she was removed from Home Affairs
Home
because you
Affairs,
had all
yes.
these things about gun licenses and
Hmm.
giving what the thing name was she was giving. She was giving extension of stay
Hmm.
to foreign nationals and all kind of thing. You had all these allegations. But what the PPP did was to remove her from Home Affairs, and then they sent her to Labor. And then after
Hmm.
she was sanctioned, she was sent now on some kind of leave. I don't know if it's administrative
Suspension,
leave, but
administrative leave, yeah.
she is off the job, is being paid, and maybe the dockage that I don't know where she is, but she's somewhere there. Again, this is the kind of corruption that we're talking about. The same C word that is so cancerous to the Speaker of the House is what we're looking at this evening. Corruption. And then we had the PS Human Services Ministry. You remember the allegations of the old age pension books
Pension,
and the
yes. Hmm.
disability books that were being photocopied and cashed. And what did we find happening there? The PS resigned with immediate effect.
Hmm.
Immediate effect, she resigned. And then shortly after, we learned that she was made head of HR, I think it is, at GRA. So they moved her from one position and
Hmm.
sent her to another position. And we have not heard anything coming out of an investigation or anything like that.
Hmm. Exactly.
Corruption, corruption at its maximum. And
And
then,
then recently we had this issue with Selwyn Greaves, the
I was
CEO
just going
for
to say,
for housing, who is earning roughly 700,000 Ghana dollars a year, but yet is able to buy a massive mansion in America at 800,000 US dollars. And then there's these allegations that it was a quid pro quo with Ahmad, the fellow who was jailed for fraud in America. So this PPP, all I know about is corruption. And I was reading in today's Stabrook an article where they were talking about the Transparency International report, and it
mm-hmm,
has shown quite
mm-hmm.
evidently that Ghana is a very, very corrupt place. Ghana was able to score 39 points, 39 points out of a maximum of 100, indicating that we are
Severely corrupt.
severely corrupt, and it's very, very unfortunate. But it will continue. It will continue until we actually remove them from power. It will continue.
Could you imagine, Mark? 39 out of 100. That's fail.
It's
39
favored a
out of
capital
100.
F.
That's fail.
It's favored a capital F.
And
Exactly.
that's what we have been able to gain on that list.
Hmm.
One of the most corrupt countries in the
It,
world.
as a matter of fact, we are the most corrupt country in this hemisphere, barring Haiti. Haiti, which is in a state of anarchy, the only country that is more corrupt than us is Haiti. We're the most corrupt country in this hemisphere. Most corrupt country in this hemisphere.
And then, Mark, if that wasn't enough, we had the PS Amerindian Affairs, where lots of allegations were leveled against her. And
Hmm.
she too, I think she resigned with immediate effect too. And the
Hmm.
next thing we now recognize that she has been the doctor in now at Ministry of Housing, where they got plenty more fraud happening, corruption. these people should rename themselves corrupt. That's what they should rename
Definitely.
themselves.
And I guess that's the reason why the Speaker of the House, who aligns himself with PPP, don't want the word corrupt or corruption being spoken of in Parliament, because he don't want to be reminded of what PPP stands for, and it just stands for corruption. Just stands for corruption.
That
I mean,
that's
it's just
that's C at the back there, right? PPP corruption.
PPPC, yeah, PPP corruption. The C stands for corruption. And the evidence is, and the sad reality of it is that when they are corrupt, is the poor people who feel the consequences of it. The very poor people who feel the consequences of it. The children who can't eat 3 square meals a day. The young people who are out of school and out of university and can't find jobs because the jobs are there for friends, families, and favorites. And if you're outspoken, like how I'm outspoken, and you speak against the government, you can't find a job. So it is just very unfortunate what we see taking place in front of our eyes. But
Yeah.
PPP days are numbered, and we all know that their days are numbered.
Yes. And so we need to go quickly on this one, Mark. We can't forget the guy Gosai from Natural Resources with the 211 million US dollars that was
That
written off.
disappeared.
Ah,
On
that
a
was
day,
written off.
he was just sanctioned with, I think he had a week off. He was given a week off to go on holiday in Dubai, probably, or some exotic place he went to. Was given a week off. But,
Yep.
but the persons who were responsible, Bara Jagdio and Arfan Ali and all those who were responsible, didn't take responsibility. Just didn't take responsibility. He was the fall guy, basically. He was just the fall guy.
Yes, he was suspended, and
Mm-hmm.
and some money's taken away from his salaries. 15 days pay, I think, taken out of his salaries.
Mm-hmm.
So I was questioning whether the 15 days pay is equivalent to the write-off that he gave. I was asking what was his salary. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
taking away 15 days from him, if that is equivalent to what he would have written off there. But you know what we found strange, Mark and viewers, is that this same guy, Gosai, he
Mm-hmm.
was seen in Parliament during the estimates.
Debates.
During
Mm-hmm.
the debates, he was there. One time he was with Natural Resources. One time he was with the Prime Minister's office. So they're concerned about, and they have no decency within them, no decency whatsoever they have within them. These persons whose names have been called in massive corrupt acts, they still have them parading as if to say it's for us to do. Charles Ramson would say it all the time. Y'all could say what you want, but we will do what we want. So they show you blatant. Whether this man do this, we will bring them back here. Whether this woman do this, we will bring them back there. And oh gosh, well, we can't forget the allegations that are being leveled against Minister Indar for his
Mm-hmm.
connection with the company.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly. And he's saying he has no connection with the company, but the evidence is there to show that he does have connection with the company. And the whole thing about it is that we have laws. We have laws to deal with corruption, but the laws are not being enforced. The laws are not being enforced, or they're being selectively enforced. If you name Brutus, for example, the
yep,
whole way to the log and come on your shoulder. But
yeah,
if you name Jack Dio, you could have who has a friend by the name of Sue.
yeah.
The law wouldn't come on you. He was caught red-handed. He was caught
We
red-handed.
we are waiting because Vice News, when Vice News broke that, we are
Mm-hmm.
still, and he said, I will sue. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, maybe Susu has become liquid, like what we say, the JSA
Exactly.
returned to Susu. Maybe Susu has become that. Sue has become
Mm-hmm.
that. So he can't find Sue to sue him. We are
Mm-hmm.
still waiting for that. And then we got the issue of this boy with TPU Group Inc., with
Tapu
all
Inc.
those millions that would have been
Millions,
awarded to him.
868 million
Yep.
Guyana dollars, and he's collected 181 million so far. And
Yes.
all he's done is 10%
Zero.
of the work in 18 months.
Zero
In
work.
18 months, 0% of the work in 18 months. And he's saying within the next 6 months, because the contract's supposed to, the Bellevue contract supposed to complete in August. So he has 6 more months ago. He said He hasn't been able to do anything in 18 months, but in the last 6 months, he's really
In the
going to do
last six
everything in.
months, he's gonna do.
All of that reek of corruption. Reek of corruption.
And this is the man who Jagdeo would have with him at his press conference every Thursday. This is the man who's there with Jagdeo. And so I would want to call now on critics and Jagdeo to tell us, where is the money from the pump station that critics collected? Where are those monies? Those monies was for mobilization, but no
Mm-hmm.
mobilization was done. So where are those monies? Teachers could have done well with those monies. The nurses
Exactly.
could have done well with those monies. The school children who are
Could have
now
done
being
well.
exposed to all kind of crazy breakfast could have done that, could have been doing well for the breakfast program.
Yes.
So
And
Jackie
Jagdeo,
and critics, y'all gonna tell us where those monies are. And the sad thing about it, you don't hear anything about any investigation. Let me remind our viewers, when the PPP came into office in 2020, right away, they did not hesitate to pull the contract from BK for the secondary school at Soesdijk and from Courtney Ben for the next secondary school, St. Roses, or whether it was St. Roses and BK and Courtney Ben at up on the highway there. They did not hesitate to pull those two contracts. Now we got Bamia Primary School. Can't finish up to now, but the contract has not been pulled. We got critics here. 18 months has already elapsed and the contract can get pulled. So you probably got to name a critics, or you got to be associated with some radio station so your contract in can get pulled.
I mean, it's just evidence the fact that not only that the government is corrupt, that the whole system, they have corrupted the whole system. I heard Jagdeo had the audacity to come out and said he didn't know anything of critics getting the contract. He only learned of it. He wasn't in the cabinet meeting when it was discussed. Conveniently, he wasn't in it. He always know how to pull himself out. Yeah, I don't know how he was able to get two kids, but he always pulling out. But
Wait, Mr. Potsalt wasn't aware?
he said he
Mr.
wasn't aware.
Potsalt?
He wasn't aware. He was totally oblivious. He was in the dark. Everybody kept him in the dark. He only heard about it in the news. Give me a break, Jagdeo. Give me a break.
But
Nobody should. Jagdeo is a known micromanager. He gonna want to know the
exactly.
finest details and everything. He can't tell me he wasn't aware of it. Give me a
Now,
break.
now how do we allow all of those monies to pass klepto, and klepto
Mhm.
ain't know anything about it? How do we allow that? How does
Exactly.
klepto allow that?
Exactly. Exactly.
The
And the
cash
fact of the
grant,
matter.
the cash grant didn't even distribute yet, and klepto said 5 months.
Mhm.
And all of those monies passing in a contract, and klepto doesn't know that. Something wrong.
It's just it defies reasoning, because if he's gonna sit every Thursday, he and his um critic, they're gonna sit every Thursday. It's quite sure critic's gonna have a conversation like this. BJ, I want this contract. See if you could help me. And BJ can say, okay, I'm gonna put my best foot forward and see if I could help you. So it's very much impossible that critic would be applying for such a big contract and is being in contact with Jagger every Thursday, but yet he wouldn't actually mention it. Jagger really think we are fools. He really think we're foolish.
But we need to get on with a couple of other things, because these things are important. So we got to talk about them. We need to talk about GCOM.
Mm,
GCOM.
mm.
I don't think G coming, I don't think G
G
come.
incoming.
I think G gone.
G gone long now.
I
G
think G
gone.
gone long now. But you know what I like? Before we go forward, I like what I saw Terence Campbell, who was one of the nightmares for Jagdeo. I like this. I saw Terence writing a letter to Prime Minister Mia Mortley.
Mm-hmm.
Mortley is not my good friend. She is
Mm-mm.
not my good friend.
She's not my good friend either.
I saw him writing a letter to her because she is now the chairman of CARICOM.
Mm-hmm.
And he is reminding her that in June of 2020, she said, in relation to the disputed Guyana election, that there must be room for all regardless of who wins and who loses. She said that. She likes to meddle into people's business, and she got her own thing happening in Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
But today, Terence is reminding her that there is only room for winners and close family, friends, and favorites in Guyana. I am hoping that she is going to respond to this letter that was sent to her by Terence Campbell. I am hoping that she is going to respond, because Mia Mortley can't say to us that she didn't see the destruction of the homes at Caneview Mucker. She can't say she
Maka.
didn't see
Yeah.
it. Mia Mortley can't say that she didn't know about the murder of the Henry boys and Harish Singh. Mia Mortley cannot say to this nation that she is not aware of the murder of Orrin Boston, who was shot in his sleep. She can't say that. But you know what? She getting curry catfish flying to Barbados for she when the weekends come. So she
Mm-hmm.
ain't gonna open her mouth. She's ducking in this country and heading into the interior, heading to Lethem and so on. But I am waiting. I tell people that we Guyanese, we little too soft. Because we should go and protest Mia Martley. Anytime she come to this country, we should protest her. We should protest her and
Mm-hmm.
let her know that she's not welcome here. She, neither Ralph Gonsalves. We don't want them here, because Ralph had known then that David Arthur Granger, who was the president, should take his licks like a man. But he's not telling his friends now to stop the corruption. He's not telling them that. He's not telling them that they should be honest. And so that kind of, those hypocrites I can't deal with. I can't deal with them. Barra Jagdio and Airfront and all of them placed visa restriction on the Haitians. And we're supposed to be one CARICOM family now.
Mm-hmm.
But you place visa restrictions on them. But there is no visa restrictions on the Venezuelans who flood in Guyana. Huh? Just a couple of days ago, I noticed on the news 195 of them entered Guyana illegally, and they were being rounded up to be deported. Nobody's saying anything about that. You got people on you pass Regent Street now. You can see how many of those beggars they got outside there sleeping on the pave. You're not finding food to give them, but the PPP got the community center a diamond, where every Friday they're giving food to the Venezuelans. Every Friday you turn up there and you're going to see them. A truck comes with a whole lot of hampers and they're giving out hampers. And you got Guyanese who's starving, but they're not giving to Guyanese.
Wow. Wow.
But this
It
G
just
thing.
points to the fact that PPP is just focused on winning the next elections, and they're prepared to win the next elections by any means necessary, even if it means you have to feed the Venezuelans, the illegal immigrants, feed them, and then give them ID cards and inform them to vote PPP, vote for the cup. It just reeks of desperation. But in terms of mottling, mottling, she should be ashamed of herself. She should really be ashamed of herself, because she must have been aware of Guyana's history and PPP history as it relates to Guyana. So when she came in 2020 and made those pronouncements, she could not have been making those pronouncements in a vacuum. She had to be being aware of PPP history, because we know for a fact over the past 23 years when they were in power, over 1,400 blacks were actually killed.
Mm-hmm.
Over 1,400 blacks, even though some may argue that the number is not 1,400, but it is totally irrelevant what the number. People were murdered, and there was rampant discrimination, where you are getting jobs and house lots based on your race, and and
Mm-hmm.
and, and that's over the 23 years. Even it happened in employment. If you look at Gaisuku, for example, they're getting subvention after subvention after subvention.
Yep.
But bauxite was allowed to die a slow death. If you go to Linden, for example, Linden was once a vibrant community, but Linden is virtually dead because bauxite is dead. And all these are as a result of PPP discriminatory policies. So when Mia Motley came here, she should have been aware of it. You said that she gets curry catfish every weekend.
Yep.
I'm amazed. I wouldn't associate cat and fish with her because that's not the way she rolls. But then, but then people do strange things in politics. In politics, people do very very strange things, and but her behavior was definitely deplorable. Rav Gonzalez, I've come to expect anything from him. He's very undiplomatic. He was very undiplomatic towards Mr. Granger, telling him
Mm-hmm.
take his licks like a man. That's very much language you wouldn't expect someone to use when you refer to a head of state. But
You
then,
know,
but
right?
then again, he's very much aligned with PPP, and I guess he has PPP way of thinking within him, and that's how he feels himself. He could have disrespected President Granger and telling him to take his licks like a man. It's just sad. It's just sad and unfortunate because of their actions, we are suffering. Personally, the kids are
Yes,
suffering.
yes.
Everybody is suffering as a result because of their actions of installing an illegal government in power, and the illegal government feel that they have power, and with power they can do exactly what they want.
But Mark, we have to go back to this Claudette Singh lady, this retired judge, this lady that's swinging left, right, center all over the place. Now, I'm sure the operator has that cue there, that video there for us, where we're going to viewers must see. Look, this is Claudette. GCOM ignores CARICOM and EU recommendations over voters registration. She has ignored all the recommendations. Now, like you said, Claudette wants the PPP to win the elections by all cost. Whether they can rig up, rig down, rig forward, that's what she wants to pave the way for. Now tell me, CARICOM and the EU would have highlighted a whole lot of recommendations. They talk about clean voters list and all these things. And here is GCOM, headed by Claudette Singh. They would have ignored that.
Wow, I mean, when you look at Guyana has a population of around 750,000 to 800,000, and the voters list is 738,000. That's over 92% of the population are eligible to vote. That is beyond ridiculous. That is
I don't
definitely beyond ridiculous. And
I don't
if
know
there
where
was
they're
ever a
getting it.
strong argument for biometrics, those are definitely a strong argument for it, because you will have people voting more than on you have multi voting when you have such a bloated voters list, basically. So it is just evidencing the fact that PPP is doing practically everything and anything that they can possibly do to ensure that they win this next election, even if it means it has to be rigged. Because I cannot get my head around the fact that Guyana has a population of 750,000, but yes, 738 are above the age of 18 where they can vote. And we know for a fact that schools have 200 and something thousand kids. So
Yes,
that definitely those numbers aren't adding up. The
they're not
numbers
adding
definitely
up.
aren't adding up. But
They're not adding up.
again, they'll take us for fools. They'll take the masses for fools, and they'll force things down our throats and said everything's gonna be okay. You don't have to be worried about the list being bloated. Well, if the list is faulty and the election is a product of the list, the election is gonna be faulty also.
Man, that is clear. That is simple. A nursery school child, you tell that too. If we have over 200,000 school aged children, how you gonna have a list with 738,000 persons who are eligible to vote? So it means you're pulling in all the school children? Huh? I don't know which school Claudette went to, and that is why we are demanding that Claudette must go. Claudette must go. Claudette must be gone like tomorrow. She's not fit. Could you imagine this woman, a retired judge, who would allow her integrity to go for a few pieces of silver? Huh? Could you imagine that? This woman, she has no shame, none whatsoever. Now, could you imagine? Claudette was there, whether she was there from 2019 or whatever, 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24, 6 years. And all them times Barajagio was calling before then for biometrics and a clean voters list. Operator, I think you have that video there with Poor People Governor, I think it is. I'm not sure if you got it. But all them times Barajagio been calling for clean voters list and biometrics. And now after 6 years, Claudette still continue to sit there and is now telling us that it's too late. It is too late. The airport, you go to the airport, biometrics. You go to the passport office, biometrics. And then Claudette is telling us now to run the elections. Now it's too late. And when we saw, is which one of the countries in Africa? 6 weeks.
Ghana.
Ghana.
It's Ghana. Ghana was able to register 15 million people. Let me put that in context. 15 million is roughly 30 times our electorate. 15 million people they were able to register within 6 weeks. And they were able to do that because of two main reasons. One, they had the political will. Both the opposition and the government were on board. And number two, they involved the international community to get the experts to come and do the process for them. But then this government here, this installed government, doesn't have the political will. There's no political will to make it done. And Claudette Singh put herself as an election expert, on a biometric expert. She already concluded it can't be done within the 6 months or whenever election is gonna be called. But she failed to realize unless an expert in that particular area speaks, then it has no weight. It has absolutely no weight in what she's saying that we don't have the time. But then the election isn't cast in stone. The election wasn't cast in stone. In 1992, the election was actually postponed to get certain changes. And the same thing could happen on this occasion. The election could be postponed to get biometrics, because at the end of the day, if this election is called and there's any iota or there's any indication, any inclination of voters' irregularity, I could foresee it's going to be a major problem in Guyana. So as to avoid that, you need to have biometrics where no one can actually question the outcome of the elections.
Well, you know what? We have already decided that we must have biometrics and we must have a clean voters list. And even if it means that we have to push the date of elections, we have to reschedule the date, we will contend with that, because we must have free, fair, and transparent elections in this country. And if the PPPC installed regime are confident of winning, then they should have no difficulty with whether we have biometrics or not. They should have no difficulty with that. But then, Mark, we can spend a whole lot of time on this. But I just want the operator to queue up a video there for us. We're going to see what's happening in this country with all the trillions and the $1 trillion budget that we're having. Let's see what's happening.
No work. Let the rain fall. Power ship come and we can't get paid. Power ship come, tell you, and the money done. Right? Can't get no money. Money done. No money. Power ship come, no money, no work. That's disrespectful. They won't be doing it. Disrespectful to people. Disrespectful since last. That's the way to go.
So those are workers from GPL. Those are workers from GPL. Now, these workers who are protesting there, they're also protesting with their general secretary. And nobody will have a problem with that. Gaisuko, Gau workers, which are the cane harvesters and so on, they would have protested with their president, who is a member of parliament. And we ain't got no fuss about that. But every time Coretta McDonald is out there speaking on behalf of the teachers, you hear it's conflict of interest. and she could either hold position of general secretary or position of member of parliament. She can't hold both. It's conflict of interest. Well, let me tell Jagdio something. Jagdio, go to the toilet, take some of the paper in there and wipe your mouth with it, because you can't decide for me. You got to decide for yourself and the PPP thieving cabal where you got there. You can't decide for me. The constitution of the GTU is clear. Why you don't ask C. Paul Narine to resign or tell him to hold one position? You see how these people behave? And I want our workers to know that.
It's very sad that people have to face the elements and face the sun and rain to get what they do. But then I'm quite sure if they were sugar workers, they would not have had to face the elements for very long. Within a day of them protesting, you would find that Jack Gio and Orphan Ali would have pacified him with a few billions. But because there aren't sugar workers, I'm quite sure I'll predict that they'll have to spend days and days protesting before the government actually act to them, to actually respond to their needs and their requirements. But you talk about questions being asked as to why you can stand as an MP and as general secretary of the Ghana Teachers Union. I was reading an article the other day and I was completely surprised when I read Mark Light was asking the very question in court. That guy is such a hypocrite. I could see it call it as I see it. He's such a backstabber. He stabbed the teachers in the back. He should just resign and just go his way. And he was asking the very question, is he aligning himself with the PPP? Because his lawyer that he has, Kamal Ramkaran, is PPP. And it's just obvious. And I'm quite sure the teachers are aware of the fact that he can't be trusted. But then if the rules, if that rule holds and that rule apply to you, then the rule has to apply to the president of GAWU. It has to apply across the board. But then people would always believe that the rules apply to you, but the rules don't apply to them. And that's just the reality of a dictatorship, where they think the laws and the rules don't apply to them. They're above the laws.
But then the other thing is, Mark, and I need to let viewers know this. The other thing is, if there's a rule that says there shouldn't be any rule that says the general secretary shouldn't be a member of parliament and holding an office. The rules should say no officer. Mm-hmm. No officer within the GTU. It shouldn't only identify a particular person. And you know what I find ironic? I mean, this matter is engaging the courts, and so I'm going to be very limited on what I say. But what I find very, very hypocritical and ironic about this whole issue is that Mark Light sat with me there as president and allowed nominations to come in for me. He sat with me during 3 years. For 3 years, he sat there with me as president. So it means that he should resign as president because he doesn't even know his constitution.
Exactly.
He sat there with me. He accepted all of my reports for the General Council meetings for 4 years. I became member of parliament in 2020. So you check it from 2020 to now. Every year we have 3 General Council meetings. All three by what? 5? 3 by, or let's say 3 by 4.
20.
12.
3 by 4 is 12, yes.
12 meetings he allowed my report to be approved for discussion and adopted. At executive council meetings, he allowed my reports and my votes to be accepted. But all of a sudden, Mark Light wake up, just like how Priya Manik Chandas wake up, just the same way Jagdio and Irfan would wake up and recognize that I'm not eligible to be general secretary because I'm a politician. Well, I'll tell him the same thing. Go get some paper from the toilet and wipe your mouth with it. But
exactly.
Mark, we got to look at what we're talking about tonight. Plenty money equals education. Plenty money equals wanton waste, poor
Waste,
performance, and
performance, and
corruption.
corruption.
Now, in Parliament, Priya went out there to say that the low performance we got with regards to math and English, the low percentage pass in math and English, was as a result of the teachers' strike.
Priya Manichan is placed in a very, very difficult position where she's failing and she has to find reasons or other reasons apart from herself to put that responsibility on. But any good leader will
Mark,
sit there and say,
before you continue, Mark, operator, could you put Priya on the screen for us, because the viewers would want to see her. Put Priya up on the screen for us, please. Yes, Mark, continue.
yes. So yeah, the fact is that any leader would live by the mantra, the buck stop with me. If the children are failing and I'm the installed Minister of Education, the buck stop with me. But the reality is the buck actually stopped with her, because what we actually seeing here in these kids failing is symptomatic of what PPP did during the peak COVID period. Those kids missed 200 days of schooling and they never had a chance to catch up. And they were just literally promoted from one class to the other, not based on academics in terms of passing of a test, but just the fact that a year had passed. So when they actually reached to CSEC, the level of CSEC, you'll end up getting those grades where 68% of our kids are failing English in an English-speaking country. 40% of our kids are failing maths in a country where maths is part of our DNA. We have always been performing well as it pertains to maths and English. But Priya Manichan as a person wouldn't want to take responsibility. She'd blame the teachers. But at the end of the day, the teachers weren't striking for themselves. They were striking for these kids also. They were striking for better working conditions. Better working conditions mean more comfortable seats for the kids, ventilated classrooms, proper breakfast. They were striking for working conditions where teachers don't have to have a class of 40 children. Oh my God. You showed the full woman here. She looked like a corpse. Yes. So the fact of the matter is that Priya was caught sleeping on the job. And as a result, the kids are failing as a result, and she should take ultimate responsibility.
But you know, Mark, when I posed the question to her, and she said, "Oh yes, the children are failing because of the GTU had the teachers out on strike and da 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 da." So I had to remind her, in 2018 the teachers were on strike, but our percentage pass in math was 46%, and our percentage pass in English was 68%. And she jumped up to say that is not true, but when she catches herself, she recognizes it's true. So I was telling her, in 2018 teachers were on strike and our percentage went up. And with you, the percentage, since you took office, our percentage has gone right down. Before the coalition came into office in 2015, our math and English percentages were way down. When the coalition got into office, at that time we had Olato Sam as chief education officer, the late Olato Sam, and then Dr. Marcel Hudson took over. And they had a whole lot of initiatives that they venture out there to do. And then we saw the rise in our performance in math and English. By the time Priya returned to office, all those percentages went down again. So who's failing?
Priya is definitely failing. Priya is definitely failing. I feel when she goes to work with a blanket and she covers herself in her office. That's because she covers herself there and she falls asleep. She has no policy whatsoever. She doesn't produce anything of substance. And as a result, the kids are failing. The reality is that teachers in Guyana are being paid the lowest paid in the Caribbean. In an oil producing country, teachers in Guyana are being paid the lowest pay in the Caribbean as a whole. And for you to argue that the teachers shouldn't strike for better working conditions, for the kids to have comfortable classrooms, for the kids to have very ventilated classrooms, for, for the kids to have proper breakfast, for the kids to have adequate number of teachers per students, a reasonable number of teachers per student. So that's the reason why they were striking. It wasn't all about pay. It include other things also. But she was very reluctant to give the teachers what they want, and as a result, the strike was protracted and ended up being at 75 days as a result.
Well, Mark, again, education continues. No, we want prayer right there. Put prayer right there. We want her right there. Education continue to receive more and more monies. More and more monies are being allotted to education, to the education sector. And all Priya is interested in, two things she got interest in. One, constructing more schools all over the place so that the kickbacks could come in. Constructing more buildings. No proper survey is being done to find out how many learners are in this area, so we can put down a school here, or how many learners are in another area. They are wild on construction of schools. Mind you, we have no difficulty with that, but proper survey must be done. You can't go build a big school and you only got 10 children to put inside. It doesn't make sense. But that's where the cutbacks come. Now we have schools. Dolphin Secondary School, you know how long they need of repair? Carmel Secondary, Charlestown, where we had the pigeons. BV Kwamina Primary, pigeons. BV Secondary, pigeons. Buxton PIC, oh! But they're not doing any works there. We got several schools in Linden, mosquito infected, fly infected, flea infected. You're not doing any work there. You got issues with toilets, septic tank malfunctioning, but you're not doing any works there because you can't get plenty drawback from that. But if you put up new buildings, you get big cutbacks from it. And there's an allegation that the Minister of Education, the sleeping minister, got ties with contracts. She got ties with contracts that have been awarded to build some of those schools in the interior. These are some allegations that are being leveled at her, that she got construction firm and they have been awarded contracts to build schools in the interior. That's why she up and bouncing and flouncing, and everywhere she going to turn sod to build schools. But you're building schools, and what is happening? Is that improving our pass rates? Are our children being better equipped? Yesterday we had big bottle, knife, cutlass fight at one of our secondary schools in Georgetown. Yesterday, that was yesterday morning. Yesterday afternoon, another gang war at East Romvelt Secondary School. Students fighting again, bottles, knives, and so on. Is it improving our schools? All these buildings that you're putting up, are our children better off? Wanton waste. Huh?
Yes, definitely. I was reading the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index report, and one of the things they were talking about is state capture. And state capture is basically where you have a few influential persons in the society that can influence the government to do certain policies that will benefit them. So, for example, I may have political connections and I could influence the government to go on a campaign or to have a policy of doing infrastructure works, for example, doing lots of infrastructure works. And that is exactly what we see happening in Guyana, because because Transparency International Corruption Perception Index actually said that is state capture, where the influential person that influencing the government to take a certain line in terms of policy line, basically, so as to do certain things that will be of benefit to them. So that explains why they just focus on infrastructure works, because their cronies are telling them that's what we need to do to get cutbacks. Because if we feed the kids, yeah, you may get some cutback, but you wouldn't get a large amount of cutbacks like if you give to P, for example, 868 million to build a Bellevue that he hasn't built as yet. He start to build as yet after 18 months. So it's just it's just it's an interesting read when you read this Transparency International report, because it puts into context everything that is happening in the country in terms of corruption and what PP is undertaking. But the consequence of their corruption has serious consequence, has effect on our kids, has effect on our next generation. It has effect on everyone, basically. And for that reason, we cannot have five more years of this corruption, because from their policies, only their friends, families, and favorites are being
Yep.
enriched, while the poor man has to go on the streets and protest to get what you actually earn for that month or for that month. Because if I heard correctly, the persons were saying that they haven't been paid since last year from
Yep.
GPL, which is very, very sad. Imagine Christmas past you haven't been paid, New Year's past you haven't been paid. It's just very, very sad.
It is so disgusting, Mark, that in the Ministry of Education, right now, we got a whole lot of square pegs in round hole. A
Mm-hmm.
whole lot of them. We got people who are just selected to fill positions, starting from the chief education officer. He was never appointed via the channels, in the sense that a vacancy notice went out, applicants applied, the applications were looked at, applicants were shortlisted, they had to undergo an interviewing process, and then an appointment was made. That did not happen. He hopped out of from where he was, bum, appointed chief education officer in front of a whole lot of senior officers. Bum, he became chief education officer. You got another set of officers who they have sidelined, and then they pull their people and put them in there. If you pass around there, you would want to know if, according to if what Modi said, if it's correct where Modi said he came to this nation of Guyana and he thought, and in his mind, this is a mini India. This is mini India. If you go around the Ministry of Education now, all the departments, or almost all of the departments, you would want to believe that you are in mini India. And I am saying this because they are preaching a one Guyana mantra. And if you're preaching one Guyana, you can't have one ethnic group dominating. Where is the mix? Where is the blend? Where is the blend? And then you know what they're doing again? They're pulling a whole lot of teachers. They're pulling out from schools. Lots of their cronies. Lots of those who will say yes to them. You already have shortage of teachers in schools, and you're pulling teachers from schools and you're seconding them to the Department of Education, and you're making them education officers, education supervisors. So you're bringing them from as low as assistant master mistress, persons who just came out of college maybe 2 years or 3 years ago, or not even so long, and you're making them education supervisors. So they're going out there who don't know themselves to supervise head teachers and other senior teachers who have been there for donkey years. They're going out there to do that. And then here, more corruption. We have an inspectorate unit at the Ministry of Education, an entire unit. And they would go out to monitor schools to make sure that all the records that you're supposed to have in school, that those records are there. that teachers are working with their schemes of work and their syllabi. They are ensuring that teachers are punctual. They check your time book to ensure the teachers are punctual, and everything else, your financial records and everything else, they go out there to do. Just last week, I noticed that there has been an induction of a handpicked group of people by the chief education officer, because he himself said it. He handpicked those persons because he is aware of their ability. Now, these persons have become regional inspectors, regional inspectors. Now, you got a whole inspectorate team. Why you have to get regional inspectors again? So you're paying 2 sets of money to do one job, 1 ton waste. 2 sets of monies to do one job, 1 ton waste. Again, those persons have been handpicked. The chief education officer himself said that at NSERD last week when they had the induction. He handpicked these people. So you see why the education system got to be faltering. And more than that, just the other day, Nigel Dharamlal had to tell Priya on Facebook that you are a failure. The movement in the education sector is not because of you. It's because of President Irfan Ali. You're a failure. And you always want to blame everybody else for your failure. Nigel Dharamlal told her that. So if Nigel could say that to her, then we're not lying.
You see, Priya isn't someone who's used to taking responsibility. The evidence is there for all to see. For example, when the 20 kids were burned to death in the interior, rather than taking responsibilities, rather than being the leader of the pack, as you would say, rather than being the leader of the pack and take responsibility and saying the buck stop with me, she put the blame on others. And when they had a COI, she didn't even take the time to go and contribute toward, testify toward in the COI.
Well,
When
Mark, don't forget, they crafted the TORs to exempt her.
Exactly. So how can you have an investigation into a major tragedy involving the Ministry of Education when the installed Minister of Education is not there to testify? And it was just obvious that they designed the TOR and the COI in such a way such that blame wouldn't fall on her, because it's a massive failure on her part, because the evidence was there for all to see. The schools were burning left, right, and center again. We had North Roosevelt Multilateral School burned down. We had St. George's burned down. We had a school and Christchurch burned down. As a matter of fact, Christchurch had 2 phases of its burn down. The day before it actually burned down, they had a fire there.
Yes.
And they identified it as being electrical in origin. And you would think they would have actually addressed that, but they didn't address it. And then the next day it burned down completely. And then they had the school, Northwest Secondary School, that actually burned down also. So and with all these fires that actually occurred, and the fact that 20 kids died in the fire in the interior, you would want to believe that Priya would have taken responsibility, would have taken shame out of her eyes, would have actually awakened and said, the fault is mine, I'll resign. But she hasn't resigned. And the evidence is what we're seeing right now. The education system is just collapsing right in front of our eyes. The performance in the STEM subjects are just dropping tremendously. Maths and English, children are failing maths and English when it's not supposed to be happening. But the reason behind it is that they're treating the teachers so badly that the teachers are migrating and going to other Caribbean islands to work. And because of that brain drain, the ratio of teachers to students, it is very high. You have large amount of students in a classroom being taught by one 40 to 1 in some cases.
Yeah.
How,
Yes.
how can a teacher effectively teach when you have 40 kids in the class? And not only that alone, lots of these kids have behavioral issues and they will be disrupting the class. And not only that alone, you have pigeons in the class.
Yeah.
Pigeons coming and pooing on your head. You have mosquitoes to contend with. You have flies to contend with, and the class is in a deplorable state. How can you have effective learning in an environment like that? All that is evidence that Priya should actually go, but she wouldn't actually go because she is a darling of the PPP as such. So she wouldn't actually go. So it isn't so much how that our kids are performing badly, it's the fact that Priya Manichan is a darling of the PPP. So they would actually move for her.
So, we're talking about schools here. We're talking about wanton waste. Mark, when we talk about, as a medical doctor, you would know that in order for our children to develop properly, their nutrition must be A1. We have seen this install regime plunging lots and lots of monies into what they call a feeding program, a breakfast program. But when you look at what is given to the learners, you want to know whether these people had good or they're crazy. We have seen learners complaining about getting fried egg, fried egg, fried egg. So in some instances, mildew bread. In some instances, they get red cake, a Solaro, and a juice. And that's what these people are calling breakfast. In some instances, early morning, you're giving curry to the children. As a medical doctor, what is your take on what is happening here?
It is just evidence of the fact that they're just completely clueless. They go and through an exercise because they feel it's something they have to do, but they don't put much thinking into it. The fact is that in terms of nutrition, you should have the 5 fruits and vegetables in a day. And obviously, from what they actually providing these kids is not 5 fruits and vegetables per day. As a matter of fact, it was only recently, I think it was in 2024, when UNICEF provided a report
Mm-hmm.
which shows that 20% of our kids are living in severe poverty, and 40% of our kids are living in severe food poverty, and 40% of our kids and the other 40 are living in moderate food poverty. In other words, 60% of our kids are living in food poverty, and that is evident in the United Nations report, where it actually shows that 7% of our kids are having what is called wasting syndrome. What is wasting syndrome? Wasting syndrome is basically when your weight is not in correlation with your height. The taller you get, the more heavy you're supposed to be. But because these kids are not being fed adequately or being fed the wrong foods, curry, for example, and curry and curry and curry, you find that the body, as a result, is not getting adequate nutrients. So to get a nutrient, has to break down itself, has to break down the muscles, have to break down your fats, and that will cause them to waste away. But 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 PP is totally aware of this fact that 7 out of 100 of our kids have this wasting syndrome, and they should have actually used this break, breakfast program as an opportunity to not only feed the kids adequately and feed the kids with the right food, but also to teach the kids what's right to eat. For example, KFC isn't right to eat. Burger King isn't right to eat. McDonald's isn't right to eat. Give them give them the 5 a day. Give them the 5 a day, and also give them foods that have the 5 food groups in it. The 5 food groups. So the point I'm trying to make is this: if you're going to design a breakfast program, it's very important that you involve nutritionists and dietitians to guide and advise you on how to prepare these meals and what to actually give these kids to get the maximum to get the maximum effect. But PP doesn't want to do that. They just go based on the whims and fancy of someone who's gonna wake up one day and say we're gonna give them a juice, we're gonna give them a piece of apple, we're gonna give them some curry, for example. And as a
Okay,
result, these kids they will continue to perpetuate the malnutrition that these kids are having because of the fact that the parents aren't in a financial position to provide them an adequate meal. And this whole thing with the wasting syndrome and this whole thing about 6% of our kids living in food poverty is a reflection on PPP, because if people are focusing on wages for parents so that parents will have adequate amount of funds to put 3 square meals on their table when the day come. And the reality is that 48% of our population is living in abject poverty, living in existing on less than five US and 50 cents a day. And when you face with such poverty, you have to think of what's best can I actually do to make sure that my kids get meals when the day come. And as a result, they can't afford to buy the proper foods. They'll buy the cheaper foods, and the cheaper foods aren't as nutritious. For example, a pound of banana, for example, is exorbitant. 2 mangoes is exorbitant, and all these things, it's impossible to actually get these things. And as a result, our kids will actually suffer, and it all feeds back to corruption. Because if the government wasn't corrupt, they would have had much more funds to feed our kids, and our kids would not have been living in poverty, for example. I hear Orphan Ali would walk around the place speaking of food security and food security. Go to the Caribbean and speak of food security. I think he got some award the other day for his views on food security. I would want the international community to come and look down on Guyana and see that 6% of our kids don't have food. 7% of our kids are have the wasting syndrome because they're not being adequately fed. And the fact is that what actually happens, it has long-term repercussion on these kids, because when you're young, your brain is developing, and for it to develop, it needs food and it needs nutrients to actually for it to develop. If it's being denied food and nutrients, these kids will have cognitive deficit as a result. But then people isn't concerned about that. They're just concerned about they're not too concerned about the cognitive deficits that these kids will have. They're more concerned about corruption and corruption and perpetuation of corruption. And that's all they focus on. And Priya gonna remain completely clueless as she is, because she just don't care. She just don't care. I don't think it's so much that she's clueless. I think it's all has to do with the fact that she doesn't care. And it's
very
quite evident that
arrogant.
she doesn't care. And she's
Very
arrogant.
arrogant. And it's like, I don't have it. I don't think we have it there. But a little child from West Rumville Primary School, he was on a program with Simona Brooms. And that child was talking about the breakfast that they're giving them at school. The child said, you come, 2 slices of bread with something, dash on it, some cheese. And this is what the child was doing. He said, some cheese, mash up, and it just dash on it with a little coloring, and they gave you that. He said, when you eat it, you feel upset because it didn't do good. And then when they finish, they give you a stink sausage. He said, you don't even, once in a while, you get some fruits. And that little child was saying, and that is not a balanced diet. That is not a balanced diet. And he was saying,
I know what he's saying.
A cool kid juice every day. They give you a cool kid juice, a cool kid juice. I mean, why can't we not buy cherries? We got tamarind. We got 5 finger. We got golden apple. Why can't we not buy those things and make juice and give our children nutritious stuff?
Exactly.
All the monies that we have allotted to education and for the feeding program. And like you rightfully said, Priya is clueless. Because just today, coming out of Region 7, the children complain about getting curried sardine, or sardine and curry. So that's the kind of foolishness that you're giving to our children, and you're calling that breakfast, and you're calling that um the feeding program where you're giving them lunch. I don't understand this nonsense. Now, if you are going to be having a massive program like this, mind you, she always talks about, and what did the coalition do? Only 4 regions or 5 regions the coalition was able to feed. Yes, the coalition was able to feed 4 or 5 regions because we hadn't oil money to do that. And when the coalition got in there, they had to clean up 23 years of Priya and her friends' mess. All the debts that you incurred, we had to clear it. We had to go and fix the Cato Secondary School that you people made a mess of. So we had money to do all this, the schools in the regions, to give them the feeding program. But never one day did you have complaints of the food not being properly cooked. Never one day. But everywhere you turn, you hear people complain. Now, I would think that a massive program like this, you are going to pull in the service providers, whoever they are, and you're going to use, we had Christmas vacation, use that period to do a crash course with these people and let them know what is required of them, and you monitor and evaluate them. But that is not being done. They live in the hinterland, so any old thing is thrown at the children. They live in the country areas, any old thing is thrown at the children. But when you come to certain schools in Georgetown, if you see Priya, how she just post up, man, when you come to certain schools in Georgetown and certain schools on the Essequibo coast, if you see how she posting up the meals, but you check to see what is happening at other schools, Sophia Primary, St. Pius Primary, J. Burnham Primary, you check all of those schools to see what is happening there. Trash, plenty money, wanton waste, corruption to the maximum. Failing Priya must go too.
Exactly, she has to go. I mean, the take-home point for Priya, for me, that I have to make to her, if you're gonna give the kids breakfast, give them a healthy breakfast, give them a balanced diet. Basically, you're gonna give them a breakfast that contains the 5 food groups, um, which are rice, grains, dairy product, meats. I can't remember the other two, but give them the 5 food groups. Also, it's key to actually give the kids the 5 a day, the 5 fruits and vegetables per
Yes.
day. Oh yes, the two I couldn't remember is fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and
The
vegetables.
five fruits and vegetables per day. But the key period that you need to understand, if you're gonna have a breakfast program to feed the kids, and we have 7% of our kids having a wasting syndrome, and 60% of our kids living in food poverty, it's only commonsensical that you involve a dietitian and a nutritionist to advise you on what best to actually prepare for these kids, to give them a balanced diet, basically, because for lots of these kids, that would be the only meal that they'll have for the day. For lots of these kids, because when they go home, they may probably get some black tea to drink, or some rice pop to drink. That's the only opportunity they'll have to have a balanced diet. So you have to make sure that you do it well and do it perfectly. The other point I want to make, under the coalition, under the AFC government, when they inherited the country in 2015, the corruption index was at 29 out of 100. And over the 5 years, the coalition was able to increase it up to from 2020 to 41. But now, as soon as the PP went back into power, we see it's going down again. And because of this corruption, that's where kids can't be fed adequately.
Yep.
People can't be paid adequately. And we have all these difficulties that we have in the country.
And you know what is disgusting is that this very minister, when she's having other programs with her officers, if you see the kind of meals that they're eating, if you see the kind of meals that they're eating, the Minister of Education, she probably got a charge book at Palm Court, because that's where she gets her special from.
Mm-hmm.
but they feel they could give ordinary people, children, anything to eat. Now, in Parliament, rather than the minister talking about what strategies and techniques and initiatives we are going to implement to raise our performance pass rate in English and math, she went off on a tangent to abuse. She doesn't think logically. She went off on a tangent to abuse. We also had the issue of the ratio, teacher pupil ratio. Now, on a overall, all the schools in Guyana, overall, your percentage is 16-1. But that is not what is actually happening in the schools. Now, rather than the minister saying, well, look, we're going to work towards making sure that this target here, 16-1, is reached. No, she went off to abuse, to talk about, you don't understand this, you can't understand because this is what we do all around. And if you walk the schools right here in Georgetown, if you walk the schools, you will see in the lower grades, grades 1 and 2, it's 27-1 teachers, 20-1 teacher, 35, 41, 28. And this is from the from nursery to from nursery to secondary schools. You have this. Even in the special schools, you have the same nonsense happening where they're supposed to be like 8-1. You have the same overcrowding. We got schools, like you mentioned, inadequate water, toilets not functioning. Teachers got to fetch water from schools in Essequibo to flush the toilets. You got St. Mary's Primary on the east bank of Demerara. The teachers got 28 teachers to 1 toilet. They got to fetch water. That school has been declared a fire hazard because of faulty electrical works. You know what they did? They built another building. And so the same feed from the old building went over to that new building, overloading the system. And Priya, this girl there, she's sleeping all the time. But let me let her know up from now, St. Mary's Primary is not going to be a Madia Derms. It is not going to be a Madia Derms. So you better get that one right. Now, teachers all across this country are complaining. Some are scared, but some are complaining about the conditions under which they have to work. Sophia Primary, toilet issues, flooding issues, East Romville Secondary that she just boasted about. When we took over that there was 1 building, now we have 5 buildings. Same school flooding. Same school got mosquito issues. And you know these people, what they believe in doing, one contractor gets 5 schools to service, 8 schools to service. And so no proper work could be done at any one school because they got to do a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit. So no proper work is being done at these schools, but the contractors collect hefty sums, huge amounts of monies, and people got to get kickback. People got to get kickback. Just about last week, I think it was, a contractor went into the Ministry of Education and he behaved terrible for his monies because he completed his work. They went, they inspected his work, and the man can't get his money, running up and down for his money. But you know what happened? He had to be running there up and down because he didn't intend to pass nothing to nobody. He didn't intend to give nobody a raise. So they got him running up and down. High, big time corruption in the Ministry of Education. And Priya Manik-Chan must be held responsible. Like I heard, going through there, going through the grapevine, there's an allegation of a missing $100 million. And so the Minister of Education, the Chief Education and Officer, and the PS, big war in between the 3 of them. Apparently the PS and the Chief Education Officer, they hold in one head. And the minister, she wants to have the monies, and I don't know, something, I'm hearing all these allegations you're getting, that the PS had to let her know, I am the financial officer in this ministry, and you can't tell me what to do here and what to do there, and you want this and you want that. So there's a big rift between them with this $100 million, but please, I hope I'll find back the $100 million and use it for what it has been allotted to. All of these people getting rich, rich, rich. The schools, no proper security system in terms of security guards. And rather than Priya saying to this nation, look, those security firms that have not been giving us worth for money, like she likes to say, we are going to pull the contracts from them. She's not saying that. You know why? We're getting big kickbacks. So if you got one security guard at a school, it's like Christchurch. Christchurch was burnt, and we can't get any video footages. No security, the security firm was not held accountable for that because they're saying it's arson. They're saying it's arson. No, the security firm was not held responsible. And you could have seen no video footages from all those places who got cameras there to see when somebody jump in there to start that fire, whether they're jumping from the Prime Minister office side or they're jumping from Middle Street side or from Camp Street side. Nothing. So it is saying to us that these people go out there and willfully commit some of these acts so that they can get big drawbacks from the new contract to build a new school. But that is where education is. Plenty money, wanton waste, poor performance, and more corruption. Priya Manikchand.
That sums it up perfectly. That definitely sums it up perfectly. And I had a theory that they used to burn these buildings so they can give the contractor friend big contracts to rebuild them. So burn to build policy. It would be interesting to see where 100 million is. If I'm to hazard a guess, I'm quite sure Priya wasn't asleep when 100 million was circulating. I'm quite sure she wasn't asleep. Quite sure she was wide awake. But it's just...
I think she's upset because she didn't get to put her hand on it. I think that's probably the case, that she didn't get to put her hand on it and she's fighting for it. But Mark, I know that our time is running out on us, but I want our viewers to know that there are attempts to sell the Winifred Gaskin Memorial Secondary School that is located in Manchester Village on the Quarantine Coast. The PPP, the installed PPP corruption regime, is attempting to sell that school. I want our viewers to know, especially the viewers on the quarantine there, to know that school was built by self-help from the residents in that area. Lancaster, Liverpool, Manchester, Ulverston, Alness. It was built via self-help. That school was built because during the 1964, when they had the big confusion then, Afro-Guyanese were prevented from passing through certain Indo-Guyanese villages. Hence, their children could not attend schools that they had to pass those villages. And so self-help caused the folks there to come together, pool their resources, pool their skills, and they built that school. So Priya Manikchand, if you and your cronies are attempting to sell that building to whoever company, whether it's Exxon or whoever you're planning to sell it to, y'all better start thinking again, because we are going to push back. We will prevent the sale of that building. Now, that school there reminds them of Burnham, and they don't like it because it was renamed later on after a former Minister of Education, Winifred Gaskin.
Yeah.
Now, that school got a lot of history. And so now we have two schools in that area, one on the north and one in the south. I'm hearing the big talks about the schools are underpopulated. Now, this school was built like a one wing of a multilateral school. That's how it was built. And then you had the home ec department and so on and so on. Now, if the schools are underpopulated, who is supposed to populate the school? The Department of Education. because you keep saying that you're going to be sending the children to schools that are within their catchment area. You know how many children live in that catchment area there? If you were to draw them from Letterkenny, Wim, Auckland, Lancaster, Liverpool, Manchester, Ulverston, Alness, Salton, and you can go on to some of the other, but if you were to pull them from those villages that I just named, you are going to have enough students to fill that school. But you know what they've been doing? They've been transferring the students left, right, and center from that very school. So they have caused that school to be underpopulated, and now they want to sell that building. They want to sell that entire compound now. But don't think you're going to get through like that. It's not going to be an easy walkover. Now, if you're saying the other school is underpopulated as well, then bring the children over, from the students over from that school to Winifred Gaskin. Since Winifred Gaskin has a lot of history, bring them over to Winifred Gaskin, because both are secondary schools. That school was a community high school that Burnham had there, where you were going to have the learners who are not academically inclined to be able to use their hands to learn skills, to put them out there in the world of work. They made all the schools secondary schools. And so that is why our children are just tagging along, and we're having so many dropouts. Our dropout rate is so high because the children cannot cope. Now you want to sell that school there to whoever and make big monies with it. But Priya Manikchand, you and your cronies better know that we will not take it lying down. We're not going to take it easy. That school will remain there as a school. That's, you know, that school was a school of excellence. And the PPP government brought that school to where it's at, just like what they did with the multilateral schools, just like what they did with President's College. They have brought that school to its face, and they will have to rebuild it. Well, we're not going to wait on you to rebuild it, because we're going to kick you out and we're going to fix it. But this is the wickedness of these people. This is the wickedness of Priya Manikchand and our crew. When you check the schools in Afro-Guyanese villages, you see the difference as it relates to schools in Indo-Guyanese villages. You see the difference. You see the amount of visits the schools get as against the non-visits from other schools. There are some schools where the teachers there don't see any education officer visiting the school. Now we got the Buxton PIC, as I'm talking about that. If you see the condition of the road that those children have to walk through there to get to their school, if you see that school and nobody doing anything, the PPP had them for 23 years, then they come for another 5 years, but they expected the coalition government to fix every single thing in 3.5 years or 4 years, to fix every single thing, all the problems that we inherited for 23 years. Priya, you will have to continue sleeping, girl. And like Dharamlal, let me join with Dharamlal to say you are a failure. And all that is happening in the education sector, it is not you. It is not your doing. You're a failure. Mark, I'll take your closing remarks before we go.
Essentially, I think our kids are our future. And the fact that this country will be burdened with $6 billion debt is those kids that will have to repay it. And as a result, we have to give them the best chance possible. Giving them the best chance possible would mean that they have to make sure that they eat healthily. It's very important that our kids get the best possible chance. Getting the best possible chance will mean that pay will have to increase. Public servants pay will have to be increased, so as to ensure that mothers and fathers would have the monies at their disposal to provide up 3 meals a day for their kids. The unfortunate reality is that when you have corruption, these things aren't possible. The kids will suffer. Public servants will also suffer as a result. So the only hope we have presently, is to vote PPP out in the next election, because that's the only way. That's the only way corruption can actually decrease. As I highlighted the point earlier, in 2015, our corruption index was 29 when the coalition when APNA FC went into power, and it was increased up to 41 by the time they came out of power. As soon as PP went in, it started to decline again.
Again.
So the evidence is there that PP has to go. That's the only hope we have for our children and for public servant and for Ghana as a whole.
Viewers, I want to say to you, for Guyana to grow, the PPP got to go. Please encourage everyone around to look around at all of what they couldn't do for you in the last 4 years, but they're hurrying to do it now. Don't be misguided. Don't be misled. And before we close, the operator will queue up a video for us to go out. But let me say to you, the PPP doesn't respect anybody. They don't respect you. The only time they need you is when they need your votes. Look at what we have happening here. We have the president and the vice president out of the country. Have you seen the swearing in of the prime minister as the acting president? Have you seen them swear him in? So even the prime minister is a rubber stamp. And you know what? It is because they don't trust him. They don't trust him. And I don't give them wrong, because when Mark Phillips was the brigadier in the Guyana Defense Force, Mark, do you remember?
When they found
rat poison in the rice in the kitchen. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that very well.
If they were attempting to do that, to poison the soldiers, maybe that was the intent. So Barra Jag, you ain't gonna take no chance with Mark to swear him in as no president. Every time during the coalition stint in office, whenever the president is leaving, the prime minister is sworn in at the airport. You see that? All you would hear on the news, the president gone somewhere. You don't see the prime minister being sworn in. You see Anil act as president, Gail act as president, this one act as president, that one act as president. No, PM Mark, you're a rubber stamp. You're not fit.
Yeah.
We have no respect for you. We don't trust you. So for Guyana to grow, the PPP got to go.
Must go.
Operator, could you tune in to that video for us? But folks, I want to thank you so much for being with us here tonight and advancing the cause. Remember, your future and the future of your children and your grandchildren depends on the choice you make now. And your choice now must be to vote the PPP out. They don't come around local government elections. We remember when they went around, they build the Bolivar, they do this, they do that. Only at elections time, when they want your vote, they will do some things for you. Don't be fooled. And let me tell you, don't feel that they're doing anything for you. It is the obligation of the government to provide for its people. So they're not doing you a favor. All those monies that were passed in Parliament is your money. So they're not doing you any favor. That's their obligation, to ensure that you have proper roads, proper lighting, proper water supply, efficient water supply, that they provide houses for you. The PNC did that. The PNC housed, clothed, and fed this nation. That was the mantra of the PNC. But you know what? The PPP's term of office started in 2020. They don't want to remember what transpired from 92 to 2015. Their period of office is from 2020 to now. But we will remember all of those young men who you killed. And there was no COI. We will remember all that you did to us. And we will not rest. Just the same way Priya said that they will not rest. We will not rest. We will not rest until the PPP, we see the backs of the PPP. Operator, are you ready for us?
Guyana. This is for ones in high elevation.
This is the biggest representative for Madyo.
I want to know all these university graduates that come from university, starting with Jagan, Barnum, and Janet and all them. And I this today, watch out, you got the people in this country hungry. All you got some big degree, more than 360. And I still can't solve the problem of the people of this country.
Yes.
Robbing them, raping them, killing them, violence them is when this one done. But never done. You got the guy in a dollar running at 200 something for $1. What's poverty there? You right now for learn them maths. Because the dear guy needs people know mathematics. You can't exist. You're right for goddamn dons. Keep them just a dons.
So there we have it. That was a citizen speaking his mind. There we have it. They have so many degrees, bigger than 360, and yet the people are suffering.
Yep.
Folks, we have one job to do, and that is to vote the PPP out. Thank you for watching with us. Thank you for being here with us. Mark, thank you once again for being with me.
Welcome.
In another episode of Advancing the Cause, and we will work. We will not rest until we see the backs of the PPP. Take care, good night, and ensure that you are safe while using the roadways. God bless you.
God bless.